What if scientists learned about the effects of ice on Midwest fish? Why is it important to have a fishing lesson? And how exactly does a stingray get present? Or pregnant? Must be present so that we can get pregnant. Anyway, to find out, let's ask Dr. Fish. That's right. This is Ask Dr. Fish, brought to you by Illinois Indiana Sea Grant, Wisconsin Sea Grant, and your fine friends at Go Beat Dog Media. My name is Stuart Carlton. I am not a Dr. Fish, but I'm here to introduce multiples of them to answer your fish questions, your science questions, and your life questions. We're joined today by Titus Seilheimer, Wisconsin Sea Grant, fisheries guru, or something like that. Titus, how's it going today? Okay.
Good morning, everybody.
There it is. Good chance to do a vocal. None of those are our topics, LOL. It's sitting there written. No, we didn't rewrite the thing. All right, well, we'll re-record that. This is a live show. It's going to be a little bit shaggy. That's the fun of the live show for those of you live on Facebook or YouTube. Although we're touching on at least one of those later today, potentially, because there's sad follow-up to the pregnant stingray story. But we're also joined by Dr. Katfish herself, Katie O'Reilly, aquatic invasive species specialist for Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. She is a Dr. Fish. How's it going, Katie?
It is going great. You got me worried there for a second, Stuart. With our
topics.
I was like, wait.
I just see the thing and read the thing. I cannot be in any way.
Ron Burgundy with the teleprompter.
Exactly. Title is done. Carolyn Foley is also here somewhere, although I don't see her on screen. Carolyn, how's it going?
I'm all right. I was purposely hiding. So.
Oh, sorry. And then look at me.
We'll figure out the StreamYard Facebook thing. I think I have an idea, but
no,
yeah.
we won't. But that's okay. That's right. No big deal. I just realized I'm not actually running our backup, so let me go ahead and fire up our backup, and which may mean that people can no longer hear me. Let's try it out. Okay. Can you still hear me? No, or yes, but I can't hear me because I have this set up for the office, not the home. But now I can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Amazing.
Sorry for the one person who's watching us. I'm sorry.
Oh, stop it. That person's happy to see it. And then can you hear this too?
I love it.
We can hear that too. And what a way to start a Monday morning.
Yeah. All right. I can't hear that. Oh, that you can hear.
We can also hear the music.
We can hear everything. Just amazing the amount of hearing going on right now. Okay, fantastic. Anyway, this is Ask Dr. Fish. What we do is we take your fish questions, science questions, life questions. If you have a fish science or life question or anything else not covered by that rather extensive list of potential topics, just paste it in the chat. And you can also send us an email, askdrfish@gmail.com. And we go down 3-4 stories. We play a game. We have an Ask Dr. Fish challenge. It's nothing but fun here on Ask Dr. Fish. Topic number 1, bored teen orcas smashing boats. Now, wait a minute. All right. So there are some orcas, which I know is a killer whale. You might know them as either. I think we're not supposed to call them that, though, right? It's on PC because they're actually really cool, and we don't want people being terrified of them. Unless, of course, you are a boat being overturned or smashed. So this was actually an old story, right? This was a year or two ago. And the thought was maybe it's because the orcas were on phones, because I think we blame phones for things nowadays. But it turns out maybe it's a different story. Dr. O'Reilly, what is going on with these teenage orcas?
Yeah, is it teenage rebellion? You know, the teen orcas having joyrides at night. No, so this story's gotten a lot of press. In some cases on the internet, just because they've been attacking rather expensive ships.
Yeah.
But this has actually been going on for about the last 4 years, and it's a subgroup of orcas off the coast of the Iberian Peninsula, so Portugal, Spain, Southwest Europe. And they've been attacking typically the rudders of the ship, so underneath what helps the ship navigate. And that obviously is bad when you are trying to move your boat. So this has caused, boaters to need to get rescued in this area. There was a recent report that a group called the International Whaling Commission put together, trying to look at why these orcas might be doing this. And they found that the ones attacking the rudders were actually a group of relatively young orcas. And they believe it might actually be a type of play And part of that is because these orcas, their food source is tuna, and the tuna have been doing really well in recent years. And along with climate change, the tuna are more like a more consistent resource. So they basically think that these orcas have some extra free time, and being very social marine mammals are kind of playing a bit, which is kind of a wholesome story.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, I
think so.
is it? I mean, teen males and juveniles getting into trouble. I mean, that sounds like I don't know if that's wholesome, but I've got teens, so I guess that might hit closer to home. So far, we've been lucky without any trouble, but
Your teens have not been ramming boats?
Well, so
they try, but they're small enough that they don't actually damage the boats at this point.
no, it's just the graduate students who do that.
Mhm.
But is that fair though? Like, it's fun, but is that anthropomorphizing a little much, do you think, to call them teenagers? Or is there a connection? Because they're mammals, right? So they're fairly closely related to us compared to, say, an insect. I'd
say that orcas are pretty smart. I mean, they have a very social life. We're not talking about our cats. I guess cats are asocial, antisocial, but I mean, they said in the report, none of these orca that were involved were older than 25. So that's like you're fully mature at 25. So these were all juveniles / teens. And hey, Stuart, if being in your teens isn't a qualification for being a teenager, then I don't know what is. But I got another thing I want to point out there when we have time, because it's fun.
Okay. We probably have time.
Yeah, I mean, people want to know what
in that article.
Not now, when, I guess I would say.
I'm going to say it is the salmon hats. Can we talk about salmon hats?
We can 100% please talk about salmon hats.
Group of orcas in Puget Sound that were one was wearing a salmon as a hat, and then a pod started picking that up.
Where was this? I haven't heard about the salmon hats.
Yeah, so they cited this in this news article talking about how different behaviors could potentially spread amongst orcas in like the same location. And they cited this one from like the 1980s, where one orca, as Titus said, off the coast of Washington State, started wearing a salmon, and then they noticed that others in its pods started wearing the salmon as well. So kind of like, the TikTok fads that everybody starts doing the same thing because they see it being done by others in their group.
So orcas have their own pads too. How do you wear a salmon as a hat? Do you have, or is it a live salmon? Probably not, I guess, at that point.
Probably after a while it wouldn't be alive, I would hazard to guess. But you only get so much, I assume, mileage out of that as well before it starts to get a little grody.
Little grody. Although maybe Titus's video went away and came back. I was really hoping he would have a dead salmon on his head.
Oh, I was hoping so too. Darn it.
Yeah, just a little disappointing.
Missed opportunity.
Okay. It really is. Excellent. Well, that's fascinating.
Oh. Yep, that's a salmon on the head, showing the image right now.
That's a salmon on the head. Look at that.
It's the height of style.
I love it. I mean, I know. I was just wearing a salmon yesterday, and I mean, I got some raccoons jumping at me, but
that's primo stuff.
It looks good. You can snack on it too.
Well, one thing I wanted to bring up is, obviously these are marine mammals we're talking about and not fish, other than the illustrious salmon hat. But it did get me thinking about, do fish play? Because they were thinking this is some kind of play behavior amongst the whales. And I started to dive a little bit into it. And it looks like, there are scientists who are researching, play amongst fish. And it opened up this whole can of worms into fish behavior that just really blew my mind. So do fish play? I think the jury's still out, but there's some evidence that they at least chase laser pointers. So I guess going back to the cats thing with Titus.
It's an interesting question. Do fish play? And then what is play? And then you get all these really nerdy definitions of play. And that's what we scientists do, I suppose. But that is good. Do fish play? Well, we will ask you that in a future episode of Ask Dr. Fish. That is excellent.
Right. So, I really enjoyed finding that salmon as hats link that we put into the chat. If anybody sees these after the fact, you can affect those. You can click those links. But we did have another kind of topical question. So in May of this year, Lake Makatawa, which is the lake kind of adjacent to Lake Michigan near Holland, Michigan, there was a bunch of fish die-offs and they were investigating it. So salmon, can you, salmon. Sorry, now I just see like salmon on Titus's head, but
Yeah.
Titus, can you tell us a little bit about what was going on there?
Yeah, so they actually have a kind of a group of folks who will turn fish in, kind of a citizen science program there. And they found a sick pumpkin seed, which is a type of sunfish. And that went into, and when you have things like fish kills and sick fish, you really need to get them early, like primarily or preferably when they're still alive, because otherwise, you can get a lot of dead fish floating up, but it's really hard to figure out what happened to those fish if they're already dead. So this started out with a pumpkin seed, then some freshwater drum were discovered, and they took these in. They did some testing, and turns out it was VHS. Which, Stuart, no, don't worry, it's not your VHS tapes. It is viral hemorrhagic septicemia, which is it's a type of fish virus that has caused a lot of trouble in the Great Lakes region in the last 10 or 20 years.
Yeah, I think some of the first reports were in the early aughts of VHS in the Great Lakes around 2005. Previously, it had only been found in Europe in the 1930s in some of the aquaculture operations. And then in North America, it first showed up in California in like the 1980s, 1990s. So, but the Great Lakes, we've been dealing with it for about 20 years.
And so tell me about VHS a little bit. So like I hear about this a lot in the context of aquaculture. They talk about it as something they're concerned about. Do we know how it spreads? Is it through like touch, or if you get close enough in the water to a fish, does it spread that way? What do we know about it?
I mean, definitely if you see one of these infected fish, it is, it's hemorrhagic. It's pretty gross.
Oh, we got to get some gross. Come on, Carolyn, hook a brother up. Let's see some gross VHS fish on the.
So hemorrhagic,
it's a virus.
Yeah, for those who might not be up on their Latin, hemorrhagic comes from kind of blood or bleeding. So that's why we're hoping to show an image of some gory fish kills here.
Yeah, imagine fish Ebola. It's kind of into that range, I think. And so they're shedding a lot of viruses, and this is something that I know here in Wisconsin they've really limited the movement of fish from the Great Lakes watershed where we have VHS to inland waters as well, to just keep it out of the Mississippi River watershed.
Yeah, so for those who are just listening, Carolyn has brought up some lovely images of fish infected with VHS.
Yeah, they're pretty gross.
Pretty grody, yeah.
And so is this deadly all of the time, or is it some of the time, depending on the species? What are the effects other than you look gross and probably can't get a date unless you wear a salmon hat over the affected area, I suppose. But what are the effects? Do we know?
Yeah, so mortality in fish caused by VHS is actually highest when the water isn't super warm. So cooler waters usually lead to higher mortality. And like Titus said, you'll see fish near the surface or washing up dead on beaches. It isn't harmful to humans. So while it can cause a lot of harm to fish and cause these big fish die-offs, especially of things like gizzard shad, freshwater drum, it's not like an automatic death sentence, but depending on the environmental conditions can be more or less deadly. And it affects some species more than others. Like muskies are actually particularly susceptible to VHS. And that's obviously a concern amongst anglers because that's a really popular sport fish.
Yeah, and I think when this came in, when this first appeared in the Great Lakes, there was a lot of, big concern about it. But in general, it kind of spread to the whole region very quickly. But in general, I don't think we've seen really big impacts. It's kind of hit or miss whether you see some VHS infections each year, and hasn't, I don't think the impacts have been like catastrophic or anything. So it's probably, something that we just are going to have to deal with. And definitely, to get on Katie's AIS soapbox, it is, clean, drain, dry, never move. You do not want to, you might have VHS in a bait bucket, which is why you don't want to, move that water and dump it when you're done. Make sure you're not moving things around, because, it's not just quagga mussels or zebra mussels. It's also maybe there's viruses in the bilge water of your boat. So, be smart.
Yeah, and I'll just echo that because Titus stole my thunder on the AIS stuff. But that's why there are regulations often in place. I know places in Wisconsin don't allow you to harvest minnows for bait in some places and move them. And, those aren't just rules to be there to crash your fishing day. It's to really prevent these outbreaks of a disease that can eventually crash your fishing day at a much bigger scale.
And that ties into a question we have from listener Peter. So even if it doesn't affect individual fish, it might affect kind of populations. Is that right?
That's possible. I mean, so some fish may survive, but especially for fish that may have smaller populations or may have certain types of genetic diversity that we want to keep. I think one example might be the coaster brook trout that are common, like found in Lake Superior, which are kind of these genetically distinct brook trout. And, losing some of that genetic diversity, if a large portion dies off from VHS, could have population level effects. Again, it's not something we've necessarily seen at a large scale, like Titus said, but it is something to be concerned about.
Sure.
Oh yeah, there's one of those pretty coaster brook trouts. And again, like I was saying, mortality in fish is generally higher in colder water. So places like Lake Superior that may not get as warm, maybe where there is some concern about VHS breakouts.
Right.
And you're like,
don't ever hear Lake Superior bragging about that.
Right.
Anyway, yeah.
Cold water. And you're wondering, why is it a coaster brook trout? Why do you call it that? And that is, of course, because it is most of your brook trout are just living in their streams. But in Lake Superior, historically, in places like Lake Michigan, these they're basically, what is it? No, it's like anadromous. They're spawning in the creeks. They're going out. Petadromous. So going from a freshwater stream to a freshwater lake. So these coaster brook trout will go out into Lake Superior, feed out there. They get bigger than the kind of stream resident brook trout, and so that's it's a distinctive life history compared to other brook trout, but they're still just brook trout, but they're cool brook trout.
So they're not just normal moms, they're cool moms.
They're cool brook trout. Done. Okay, we do have a question from listener Ethan. Are we starting to see any signs of it becoming endemic, lowered mortality and increased exposure inoculation, or is it just too high a kill rate? And I think this is about VHS. So Katie, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I'll take it first because I'll probably knock it over to Titus. I am not sure. I haven't seen anything lately about it becoming endemic. More so, but I think that's also because there's so much variability year to year about where outbreaks are happening. If it's a population that hasn't been exposed to the virus, again, the temperature and how warm waters get, how quickly. But I'll defer to Titus on if he knows anything more or less hand wavy, I guess.
Oh no, mine is also totally hand wavy. Yeah,
I mean,
it has been here, and it did. I said like it spread really rapidly throughout the region, and I don't think that we're seeing. I guess could it be endemic? Maybe. I don't really know anything about viruses though, so I'm not going to say anything. But it's definitely a concern. It's another another issue that fish have to deal with, and that fish managers have to be aware of and keep an eye on. And anytime you have a big fish kill like this, that is a concern. And I think in this case, at least we know what caused it. I know we had a kind of a fish kill in Lower Green Bay a couple years ago, and nobody got any fish soon enough. And I think it was still kind of a question, why did these catfish die? Well, we don't really know because they were already dead.
It happens.
Dear.
All right. Well, I guess I'll cross off the next question of whether or not VHS was made in a lab, and we'll treat that in a different.
Oh, jeepers creepers. Okay. So, as a reminder, this is Ask Dr. Fish, a show where our two Dr. Fishes answer your fish questions, science questions, and life questions, though we're relatively heavy on the fish and science questions because Carolyn's our editor. Okay, or our producer live now. If you have a question for our doctors, you can put it into the chat right now, as Ethan just did. You can use the Twitter hashtag Ask Dr. Fish. And the other day I heard something that said hashtag still exists. You can also email us at askdrfish@gmail.
As effective as ever, too, actually.
Yes. All righty. So, okay. So I'm going to do a weird throwback. I found a story about a plesiosaur. And so
throw way back.
It's a magical Leopleurodon, Charlie, but it's actually a magical plesiosaur. So, tell us a little bit about this huge sea monster that they found in Dorset, please. And either one of you can take this one.
Yes, you've heard of the Loch Ness Monster. This is just in Dorset, and it was swimming around. Oh, okay. So it's actually a fossil. It is a fossilized plesiosaur. Is that how you say it? A large fossilized remains of a very large marine reptile from millions of years ago. Actually, they discovered the skull there. And actually, I think that, keep scrolling down because there's a great picture of them trying to find the rest of it, because they found the head and then they're like, hey, where's the rest of this? And, giant teeth, big biting power. And there's this picture of basically this team trying to excavate or find where the rest of it is. And they're midway on the cliff. There's this tarp kind of covering most of the cliff where these remains are found, but a really cool find.
Yeah, and the plesiosaurs are just really wild looking creatures. So they've got this huge head that we've seen in these pictures that's sort of like a crocodile. It's got the pointed snout with some big old chompers, and then they've got these really thin long necks and 4 flippers. So like Titus said, this isn't actually a fish. This is a marine reptile. But this is oftentimes what has been claimed that, might be the Loch Ness Monster, despite the fact that the plesiosaurs went extinct way, way before anyone was ever thinking. Yeah. Well, and they were marine too. So, would they do great in a freshwater loch?
I don't know. It's possible. Yeah. I mean, you've seen bull sharks in Lake Michigan. Very often you'll see those.
There are species that can handle both salt and freshwater. Unsure if the plesiosaur would have been one of those, but there actually have been some findings in like riverbeds. So it's possible that they could use, habitats where it was slightly salty, slightly fresh.
So here's a question, Carolyn. So plesiosaurs that lived about 150 million years ago, or not Carolyn, whenever I think of the species I'm about to ask about, I think about Carolyn. The lake sturgeon is also supposedly about 150 million years old. So I guess these wouldn't have swam together because of the saltwater freshwater divide, right? But maybe but did they coexist as far as you know?
I guess go ahead.
Yeah, I'll jump at that one.
Thank
Katie.
you.
You're too professional to speculate on these types
You're
of
right.
things, but why not? I've heard that they've been found in some river fossils as well. So it is possible. And there are sturgeon, lake sturgeon are old, but there are sturgeon that will go between freshwater and saltwater as well. So I think some of our like green sturgeon, white sturgeon are, can be over 1,000 pounds. And I think that's at least a decent snack for a plesiosaur. just our lake sturgeon would be like popcorn, and they'd just be, using those flippers to throw them into their mouths. But you get a 1,000-pound meal, and that, is at least a kind of a mid-morning snack for a giant reptile.
Second breakfast.
11Cs. Yeah. So the other thing that I keep thinking about is, so I do some work on one of Stuart's favorite species, round gobies, and in their original environment in brackish waters, they get quite a lot bigger. So maybe than they do in the Great Lakes. They're reproductive and everything, but they really don't get quite as large as they do. So I'm now thinking about, like, could the pliosaur, I'm so sorry if I'm almost definitely,
it's dead. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, it's not going to get upset.
I can still apologize, but
no, there's
a
picture here of Nessie, like with the head up, just a single tear going down his face.
The disrespect.
But could it be just, like a smaller version or something like that it just doesn't thrive as well? It can survive, it just doesn't thrive. And that's just cool to think about.
That's an interesting, it also brings up, I know neither of you are evolutionary biologists, but this idea of like life strategies and sizes, right? Like all these big things kind of died out with a few exceptions. Blue whale, orcas are pretty big, and bored apparently, but but the sturgeon is smaller, and so it's still here 150 million years later, and the plesiosaur is, we don't even know how to pronounce its name. That's how dead it is.
Of course, the blue whales weren't large then. They were, didn't they evolve since that extinction from like small mammals to, goofy, like look up what whales look like on land, and that's pretty adorable. Oh yeah,
there's that Nova documentary. We were going to watch that, but then we ended up watching baseball instead. Well, I'll have to watch that, and then we'll talk about it next month.
Well, and I think, at the risk of not being an evolutionary biologist talking about things.
That's not a big risk.
That's not a big risk on here. I mean, you have to think about, life is all about trade-offs, and especially life in the wild. And so, there can be positives to being really big. Like, obviously, you're king of the hill. You can eat smaller things. But it also makes you more vulnerable if, say, like the climate changes really rapidly. Like if a meteor or asteroid was to hit the planet, per se. So
or there's carbon emissions.
Or there's carbons, occasional things like that. Whereas, small, you might be popcorn for a bigger predator, but you might be able to handle environmental changes a little bit more, successfully, perhaps. So life is all about trade-offs.
All true.
Yeah, can we vote? Like, is the Loch Ness monster real? I'm gonna vote no.
Well, I'm gonna say, what about Bessie, the Lake Erie monster? Is anyone familiar with her?
Oh,
okay, Lake Champlain.
Yeah, they all got a monster. Every good lake has a monster, right?
Every good lake has a monster.
Does Superior have a monster?
Mm-hmm. Superior is the monster. Sorry, Superior. Sorry, you're a beautiful monster.
Don't get mad.
There was just a cargo ship that I believe ran aground in Superior the past couple of days. So yes,
the marine vessel Mishawakaton near Isle Royale collided with something. They don't know what, and they started listing to like 15 degrees, and they had to like make an emergency trip to Thunder Bay because they were something was going on.
Yep.
Like maybe it was that monster.
All wet, I guess. This is Ask Dr. Fish, a show where our two doctors fish answer your fish questions, your science questions, your life questions. If you have a question for our doctors, put it in the chat right now. Don't wait, because we're halfway home. Or if not, use the Twitter hashtag, which Carolyn swears are still a thing. Ask Dr. Fish. And you can email us at drfish@gmail.com. Our next topic is a recurring one in the spring. Oh, I'm being helped. The imposing finger of wait up. What's up?
Actually, before we go to our recurring topic, I wondered if you wanted to share the unfortunately sad update on Charlotte the stingray, who we covered.
No, I don't, because I don't have it ready in my mind.
Okay. So unfortunately, on a previous episode of Ask Dr. Fish, we spoke about Charlotte the stingray and how could this stingray have gotten pregnant. And recently there was an update about Charlotte, and unfortunately, Charlotte, it turns out, is not pregnant. It turns out that she's sick. And so this story came out just a couple of days ago. There's Charlotte there. and she's developed a rare reproductive disease that has negatively impacted her reproductive system. The findings are truly a sad and unexpected medical development. So I'm not sure if there's anything else you wanted to share about that, Stuart, but I will share the link in the chat. And it's just a bummer because you have this cool like parthenogenesis story, but there's in the story they're talking about how we weren't lying, we did the best we could. So I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to share.
Well, the one thing I would say, it is a bummer because it's one of those things where you latch onto, right? And I always think it's kind of a double-edged sword when we really emotionally attach to these things, because that's our own way of taking our human values into nature, kind of like we're talking about the orcas, right? And there's a lot of value in that because when people identify with nature and everything, they're more likely to want to protect it or conserve it or whatever, but it's not a perfect fit. But the one sort of hopeful thing I think about this is when we talked about it, scientists were really confused because it didn't make any sense how this could happen, right? And Titus or Katie said, well, stuff just happens sometimes, and maybe this just happened. But in some ways, it's like, well, we did sort of understand the reproduction, and we did understand that this didn't make sense and that something wasn't right. And it's too bad. It was a fun story, but in that way, I draw some positivity from it.
Yeah, and it's science. Like we've learned something about these stingrays, and I think getting people to engage more with these species and be curious about them is a win in the long run. But let's just hope that she's okay.
Get well soon, Charlotte.
Get well soon, Charlotte. That's excellent way to end that segment. So thanks so much. Okay, Stuart, now we can go to the segment you were going to start on.
To the segment I was going to start on now. This is when we turn to Titus, Dr. Fish himself, or as we call him, Dr. Titus Seilheimer? Anyway, but first we have the brand new imaging for it, or the brand new music. No title card yet. Tell me, Titus, who's spawning now? Tell me, Titus, who's spawning now? That's right, it is Who's Spawning Now with Titus Seilheimer. Titus, whose favorite hobby is to record videos of fish in doing a thing. Who's spawning?
Doing the thing.
Doing the thing. So who's doing the thing?
Yeah, who is doing the thing? You're doing the thing with that music. That's amazing, Stuart.
Yeah.
I love it. So who is spawning right now? I'm going to report in on the bluegills are spawning. Just some video that I recorded here from today. And if you're just listening, what we've got is multiple nests of bluegill. So bluegill and the sunfish in general will the males will build nests, and so these are basically circular depressions that they will guard, and then the females can kind of come in, and then the males will guard those nests with the eggs in them to kind of protect those fertilized eggs and sometimes the larvae as well. So we've got multiple nests. They kind of know their neighbors, so there's actually some benefit there to kind of protecting your neighbor's nest maybe. But yeah, it's a great time to be able to observe fish again, because they're close to shore. They're in shallow water. Things like bass and sunfish spawn fairly shallow, so you can see them.
And so bluegill spawn, is it just like a one male to one female thing, or is there some broadcasting, as we like to call it, going on?
Yeah, there's Katie, throw in some facts.
No, I was just gonna say, so it's not necessarily broadcasting, but female bluegill and other sunfish may visit and lay eggs in a bunch of different nests.
Okay.
So you've got each male kind of staking out his territory, and then the females kind of going around and checking out what kind of real estate's available.
And then you've got some funky, like some different male strategies as well. Like you can be a big, like bulky male, and you build the nest, you guard the nest, but you can have sneaker males who are really small, and they just kind of, when they see the male and female pair up, they sneak in there to, sneak in some of their reproductive material. Some will actually be like, can actually mimic females as well. So, really interesting ecology with those sunfish.
So like the concept of a sneaker male, when I first learned about it, it was just the salmon, right? Like you have the jacks and the hook nose and the jacks or whatever. And then, there's the one that sneaks in. And at the time it was just like, that's a really neat evolutionary strategy. And now it just creeps me out. And I'm also amazed by how many different species have like sneaker males that essentially just sort of like hide in the weightings, and when they see that things are getting exciting, they just go in and go like, and maybe somebody will get pregnant. So can you talk a little bit?
Awesome. That for those of you watching, so the extension of the fingers in an explosion of
it messes with my head anyway. So all right, so how many different species like in the Great Lakes are using this type of reproductive strategy? Do you have a sense of that? Is it like a lot or most?
Sneaker strategy?
The sneaker, yeah, that like some of the males are sneakers and some are the big broadly, etc.
I will say I don't think we have a good sense of the full breadth of that. Like there's a lot we still don't know about fish reproduction in general, and especially some of these more behavior type things that unless you're actively observing, like Titus said, it's so easy to observe what's going on in shallow water. But there's a lot of species who aren't necessarily spawning in shallow water. And so I don't know if we have a good sense, but maybe Titus will prove me wrong since he is the king of observing spawning.
Yeah, he is the king of observing.
Yeah, and I think, it's not like not every species is going to do this. So you really need, this kind of nest building. Like, with salmon, they will, they build reds, REDD. There's your vocabulary word of the episode. And those are, actually the females will build these reds, and then, the males can, pair up and spawn. I think it would be more common with things like with sunfish, maybe not bass as much. Like I don't hear about it with bass. Bass are in the sunfish family, but they're just bigger fish. So I think if they're kind of a smaller like sunfish, that's also bigger populations where you may not be able to compete for a female on the the brawn kind of stage.
But sometimes it's explicit, right? With the suckers, they often will do it in trios, right? It'll be two males and a female,
or even not uncommon to see a female with white suckers at least, and 4 males. Okay. And I think there's kind of the initial pair, and sometimes these other males will kind of try to jump in too. But that's kind of broadcast, like they're just spawning. There's no parental care, and you look at other fish like, ciscos that are just spawning out in the lake, whitefish, lake trout. I mean, there's not a lot of thought to that. So sturgeon as well, we just had our great sturgeon time, and you get, sturgeon are just next to each other right on the rocks, and that's it. So
I was going to say new Great Lakes cocktail name just dropped, and that's sturgeon on the rocks.
Sturgeon on the rocks.
Sturgeon on the rocks. Writing that down.
Yeah, there's a sturgeon distillery somewhere. I just saw it. I don't know where it is, but I think it's it's in one of our states here.
I have a friend who genuinely one time she was being kind and getting me some beer, and she bought one, I think because it was called Laughing Fish, and she was like, oh, I gotta get this one, it's fish. And the person who was helping her was like, I don't know if she'll like this one. She's like, no, it's fish, I have to get it. Okay, so just a reminder to those who are watching or listening online during the live stream, if afterwards you can post a question too, and we'll try to answer it in a future episode, but you can go ahead and put questions right into the chat if you like, and we should be able to answer them live on the air. But right now we are going to move to our Ask Dr. Fish challenge, which, as a reminder, every month we come up with a challenge that we hope we do ourselves, and we hope that the people at home who are listening to us will do as well. So I can't remember who was it, Katie, who set this challenge last month?
Yeah, I think I might have been the one who set this challenge.
Okay, so do you want to remind us of what the challenge is, Katie?
Yeah, so the challenge last month was to go to a new water body, preferably one that was local to you, and just take a picture of your exploration. So pretty straightforward.
Okay, cool. And so we'll share
Yeah.
Katie's update right now.
I was going to say, I totally did not do the local part of the challenge. I was traveling a bit in April and May.
Look
and so,
at that.
Yeah. So I did not do freshwater. I didn't do local, but this is an image of the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Northern California. I was out there doing a training for California Sea Grant.
What?
And had a chance to go out to the coast and see some sea lions. No salmon hat wearing sea lions, unfortunately. But it was just really cool to get a chance to get out to the ocean again. As much as I love the Great Lakes, it's always nice to get back to the coast.
Yeah.
That coast in particular, too, I feel like is so...
the western coast of the U.S. is so beautiful.
So scenic,
yeah.
So where were you exactly on the west coast? You were California Sea Grant. Were you at... well, they have a couple different locations.
Yeah, so we were actually in Sacramento, but that image is from around the Fort Bragg area, heading up along US 1 on the west coast.
I'd be Fort Bragg too.
Cool. Okay, so now we're going to go to Titus's update. If I can share it. Okay.
Look at this.
Yeah, so I headed to the west coast as well. This is the west coast of Lake Huron in Thunder Bay, just south of Alpena, Michigan. I was over there for the Great Lakes Fisheries Heritage Trail Conference, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna get my hotel, and couldn't get the room rate was gone, so I was like, is there anywhere to camp? So I camped at this small, it's like a state forest campground about, it's only 10 miles south, and I actually had a campsite right on Lake Huron on Thunder Bay. So that's for $40 for 2 nights total, not a bad deal compared to staying at the generic chain hotel in Alpena. So took a little we can share that link up. It's a time lapse I took of a nice little sunset. So
that is sweet. Alpena, Michigan, home of the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, and friend of the show, Stephanie Gondola. There we go.
Okay, so I'm going to share mine now. Whoops, I'm sharing the wrong presentation.
Ooh.
Oh, that looks...
I had a good run.
It's a presenter view.
Okay, so so I also did not go to the West Coast. Good golly.
That looks good, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah.
A leftover from our game. Okay, so we'll share this screen and we'll try this instead. Okay, so
there it is. Look at this.
Yeah, so in the month of May, I got to camp also on Lake Michigan down around South Haven. I thought we were going to Holland, but halfway there realized, we're going to South Haven, which actually turned out really well because we were right close to the lake. It was absolutely gorgeous, super calm, super pretty. It was awesome. It was just awesome. It was May 2-4 weekend, and I did not want to come back. So
yeah, that's good. Well, for mine, I wasn't even sure what, I struggled with the assignment a little bit, I'll be honest. I wasn't sure what a body of water is, so I asked ChatGPT, who said a body of water is a significant accumulation of water, generally on the Earth's surface, which includes various natural and artificial formations, such as oceans, seas, rivers, blah, 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 blah. They can vary greatly in size, depth, and salinity, serving diverse ecological, geographical, and human purposes. They play a crucial role in the hydrologic cycle, blah, blah, blah. That didn't do it for me. So then I said, now please expand the definition of water, the definition to include a large pot of water. So it said the same thing, but then in a broader and more inclusive sense, the term body of water can also refer to any contained collection of water, regardless of its natural or artificial origin and regardless of scale. This expanded definition would encompass not only natural and large-scale formations, but smaller controlled accumulations such as those found in artificial reservoirs, swimming pools, or even large containers like pots or tanks. For instance, a large pot of water, while not naturally occurring or geographically significant, is a contained collection of water and thus fits within this broader interpretation of a body of water. And so we had a body of water at my house, which was a crawfish boil that we hosted with the big daddy, a large red swamp crawfish. And me and Harper, when Harper was about 2 years old. And so we had a crawfish boil at our house. There I am with a body of water right out front. And so this was this weekend, and I was thinking about telling Katie about this because these are red swamp crawfish. So we got, shipped in from Louisiana. They got mailed by FedEx, and that's a big, nasty, invasive species in this area. And so we had a biosecurity plan. I had it all written out. I had materials printed from Illinois, Indiana Sea Grant. So we had to cancel some things. It was interesting. Because like when you have a crawfish boil in Louisiana, what you do is you have crawfish races with the kids and you put them and they try to run each other and you let the kids hold them because half of the fun of the crawfish boil is the beer. But the other half is it's like the kids who are both obsessed with and freaked out by the crawfish and, like terrified, but also really like them, sad about eating them and also like, it's all of the emotions, right? And so we had to miss out on a little bit of that in order to be safe. We kept them in the sacks in my garage and we would let the kids hold them in there while I was watching before too many of the beers had been consumed. But it was a neat chance to do something, but it also showed you why these sorts of things are important. We talked about fish fries a couple of episodes ago, right, as our challenge. And part of what you get out of this is this sense of community. We had the whole neighborhood over and, half of the baseball team came. I think some of the baseball teams listen. I apologize for not inviting you. If you weren't there, it was people that we knew outside of baseball, but they happened to be on the baseball team. Sandy, could you edit that out? Thank you. And, but we had, some other friends and family friends over and stuff like that. And so it was a really nice community moment and we ate a lot of crawfish and had fun, but we're able to do it in a way that was safe. But it showed to me the importance of both of these things, right? Of being safe and careful, but also of having some sort of community event, a way that can bring together. And oftentimes that's around a communal pot of food. And so it was a really great experience overall, even though it was just a little bit different from how it is at home because you are a little bit nervous because it would be very awkward for me to introduce those into the local ecosystem.
They're quick too. Like they have spread because like people think that they came in to Michigan, for example. People were having them at golf courses, at events, and they just got out. So anyway, we can talk about red swamp crayfish in another one because there's all sorts of fabulous research happening around that. That's just like to have a sampling site. Brian Roth has a sampling site that's like Taco Bell Pond, and I love it. Anyway, so all right. So thank you for that. I will note too that because I have shared before that I wound up watching various food shows. They had a crawfish boil on Top Chef recently. So if anybody has Peacock, you can watch when they do a crawfish boil in Wisconsin, Titus, in Wisconsin.
So, look at that.
Okay.
Yeah, our the director of Illinois Sea Grant said I should do it Swedish style, which involves different spices. I rejected that suggestion. All right, since I won
buried in the earth. Okay, so
I currently won this Ask Dr. Fish challenge. I get to pick next month's topic. Carolyn says I didn't win.
You totally spoke over me, but we have 9 minutes left, so go for it. You won, Stuart.
Thank you.
I don't think we have winners anymore, Stuart. But in my book, you're always a winner, Stuart. So good work.
We're all winners here.
Yeah, we're all winners.
All right, well then, I'll tell you what. I will reach into the jar of topics and pull out next month's Ask Dr. Fish challenge, which is create some fish art. Look at that. Create some fish art for next month. A little theater of the mind for those of you listening. So great. So for Ask Dr. Fish, the August episode, we'll be creating fish art, which Titus does every day.
Are there any like limits on it, or can we just go crazy?
Just go crazy. Just go nuts.
Perfect. I like the way that sounds.
Bananas, we're supposed to say. Just go bananas.
Let's go.
Just go bee.
Go nuts.
You can whatever you like.
No rules. No rules.
No rules. Okay. All right. So we are down to the last 8 minutes of our June 2024 episode of Ask Dr. Fish. Once again, if you are watching this after the fact on either of ours on YouTube or on Facebook, feel free to drop any questions, even if it's about the topics that we have. We do go back and double check the comments later. So love to hear from you. I think it's time for our game. So we're going to go to the old standby, 20 questions. Katie, you're picking.
Ooh, okay.
Do you have a fish ready? And you can have a moment if you like.
Oh, come on, make it plesiosaur.
Okay, I think I got one.
Plesiosaur. Magical plesiosaur. Okay, so, all right. So I am not going to play because I always mess up. But Titus, if you would like Stuart to ask questions as well, you can draft him right now.
I always enjoy Stuart's standard questions. That means
All
I don't
right.
have to ask those.
Okay, so 20 questions. Katie has a species. Titus and Stuart are going, and I'm going to trust you all to count. Go for it.
All right, I'll start.
Okay, go.
It looked like you nodded at me, so I was like, all right, Titus is giving it to me. I'm going to take and run with it. Here's the one, the only. Does this fish live in the benthos?
Yes, most of the time.
Most of the time in the benthos.
Okay, does it have a spiny dorsal fin?
Sort of. It has one spine in the dorsal fin.
Stupid automatic train. Hold on, let me turn
All
those
right,
off.
single dorsal spine, benthic species.
All right, here we go. Benthic species, single dorsal spine. Does it spawn in groups of more than one male and female typically?
I think it's typically got more of like a nesting behavior. So it's usually more one-on-one.
Does it have barbels?
Yes, it does have barbels.
All right. Run along questions. Did it live at the time of the plesiosaurs?
Not in its current form.
Okay. Well, that eliminates a lot. You're welcome, Titus.
Yeah. Does it have large scales?
No.
Small scales. Or
Does it have small scales?
I mean, not really. I would say they're not visible to the human eye.
So it is scaled. They're really small, but it has scales.
No, actually, yeah, I would say it doesn't. It does not have scales.
Scaleless.
Does it have scales or not, Katie?
It doesn't have scales.
Isn't it true that it doesn't have scales? Yes or no or yes?
It does not have scales. I'm double checking that just to make sure.
Googling, yeah. Perplexity.ai. Okay. So now whose question is it? Oh, does it have
you asked the scales question.
Oh, I did.
So,
okay. All right. Well, it's your turn.
Well, you asked the second scales question.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to ask, does it have an adipose fin?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you sure? No.
Yes. I was double checking the scale thing. It does not have scales.
I got you. Adipose fin. All right. Let's see. Are questions of coloration useful? Probably not. Does it have spots?
Coloration questions are not super useful.
All
It
right.
can
Well,
vary. Yeah.
You
wasted that question.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Variable.
Look.
So
I'm not a Dr. Fish.
Yeah, is it see, I've got it narrowed down, but let's say, okay, so does it have pectoral spines?
Oh.
Yes.
Does it have pectoral spines? All right. Is it larger than a loaf of bread?
As an adult, generally, yes.
Ooh.
Oh, that was a good one by me. Nailed it.
That's good.
Very proud. Oh, wait. We're at 12. It's your turn. Titus.
Yeah. Does it have, is the tail, the caudal fin forked?
It is indeed forked.
Oh.
Boom.
Is it found in all 5 of the Great Lakes?
I believe so, yes.
I believe I have a guess.
Oh, hold on. Let me get out the sound pad. All right. So, as you recall, we're going to do the guess, then the drum roll, and then we'll do the appropriate either ta-da or womp womp. are what the sounds are called. So here's the guess.
A channel Dr. Katfish.
Yes, indeed. Meow.
That was language. That was you, I think. There it is. Fantastic.
It is indeed a channel catfish. Kind of,
All right.
the fish of summer.
Look at that. Beautiful fish, beautiful tail. Look at those spots I would point out in the drawing right there. I would just indicate there are spots there. And so that means that Titus gets 30 seconds of soap time.
However, before Titus does that, because Katie said meow, we have to do a quick shout out to one of Carolyn's favorite shows, Meow. And if you know, you know. All right, Titus, get your soapbox.
All right, my soapbox. I'm gonna soapbox eating smoked fish, mainly because I had smoked fish for breakfast. I'm on vacation at my mom's. It's not a vacation; it's a family trip. So we're having lots of fun. But I brought some local to me over in the Lake Michigan coast, some smoked lake whitefish from a local commercial fisherman. And this morning we took that. We had some English muffins with cream cheese, put some smoked trout right on top. Delicious. So go find some smoked fish. It's really good. We also cooked, I cooked some delicious grilled lake whitefish while I was here too. And so look for that and eat some fish.
There it is. We had some smoked whitefish at the Crawfish Boil, brought to us by Dr. Thomas Hook on his way back from the UP. It's very excellent.
Excellent.
Dr. Fish is brought to you by the fine people at Illinois Indiana Sea Grant, Wisconsin Sea Grant, and Goby Dog Media. The show is produced and hosted by Stuart Carlton, Carolyn Spooning, Dr. Fish Cody O'Reilly, and Dr. Fish Titus Seilheimer.
The live broadcast is supported by Motia Gubiande. The podcast version of the show was edited by Sandy Swoboda, who just texted me asking where the files are. And I had to tell her we're recording live, Sandy. Clearly you're not watching. The podcast artwork is by Ethan Kosak. You can view his portfolio at ethankosak.com. I think he's got a new book coming out. His books are fun, illustrated things about farts and what have you. So highly recommend it.
If you have questions for our Doctor's Fish, send an email to askdrfish@gmail.com. Use the social media hashtag AskDrFish. Call our hotline at 765-496-4474 or pop a comment onto the recording of where you're viewing this. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you live on Facebook and YouTube at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on usually the second Monday of every even month. Or, just look for when we've scheduled it. In between now and then, if you have fish questions, science questions, or life questions, just ask Dr. Fish.
Hey, we did it.
Yay. Oh, it's still on.